Welcome back to Cross-Strait Chronicles. We turn complex cross-strait history into stories you can actually enjoy. Grab a seat, relax, and let's travel back in time, across the strait. In Episode 11, we watch the Qing dynasty try to reinvent itself through late reforms, abolishing the imperial examination system, promising constitutional government, modernizing the military, building railways. It was ambitious. It was dramatic. It was also too little, too late. The railway crisis sparked protests. The protests spiraled, and in 1911, revolution ignited. The Qing court had finally embraced modernization, just in time to lose the empire. And at the center of that collapse, a 2-year-old child who had absolutely no idea what was happening. Tonight's story begins with a toddler, not a general, not a revolutionary, not a reformer, a toddler. And somehow, this small child would become the final emperor of over 2,000 years of imperial rule in China, and one of the most tragic, strange, and cinematic figures in modern Chinese history. His name was Aisin Gyoro Puyi, but history remembers him as Puyi, the last emperor of the Qing dynasty. This is the story of a boy placed on a collapsing throne. Segment 1. A child chosen by fate and politics. It is 1908. The powerful Empress Dowager Cixi is dying. The Guangxu Emperor is already dead, under mysterious circumstances that historians still debate. The Qing court faces a terrifying question: who will rule? The dynasty is fragile. Reformers and conservatives are fighting. Foreign powers are circling. Revolutionary ideas are spreading. And the solution? A toddler. 2-year-old Puyi was chosen because he was young enough to control. He cried when soldiers carried him into the Forbidden City. He screamed when court officials bowed to him. He had no idea why everyone kept kneeling. Imagine being carried into a giant palace, surrounded by strangers shouting, "Long live the emperor!" and you just want your nanny. That was Puyi's first day as emperor. Segment 2. The Forbidden Childhood. The Forbidden City was enormous. To Puyi, it was not a palace. It was a golden cage. He was told he was the son of heaven. But he could not leave. He could not choose his friends. He could not visit the outside world. Thousands of eunuchs served him. Court rituals surrounded him. Every movement was scripted. When he misbehaved, adults bowed anyway. When he threw tantrums, servants trembled. Power without freedom, authority without understanding. It sounds grand. It was deeply isolating. Segment 3. The Revolution Outside the Walls. While Puyi learned how to sit on a throne properly, China was exploding. In 1911, the Wuchang Uprising triggered the Xinhai Revolution. Revolutionaries across the country declared independence from the Qing court. Provinces broke away one by one. Railway protests turned political. Military units defected. And leading the revolutionary movement was Sun Yat-sen, advocating republicanism, nationalism, and democracy. Meanwhile, Puyi was still learning calligraphy. He had no idea his empire was dissolving. By early 1912, Qing officials realized the truth. The dynasty could not survive. And so they negotiated, not with foreign powers, but with their own generals. Segment 4. The Abdication That Changed Everything. Enter Yuan Shikai, a powerful military leader, ambitious, pragmatic, very good at reading which way the wind was blowing. He convinced the court that abdication would preserve stability and perhaps preserve some privileges for the imperial family. On February 12, 1912, the Qing court issued an abdication edict. Just like that. 2,000 years of imperial rule ended, not with a final epic battle, not with the palace in flames, but with paperwork. The Republic of China was declared. The child emperor officially stopped being emperor. Except he didn't leave the palace. Segment 5. The Emperor Without an Empire. Here's where things get strange. Under the abdication agreement, Puyi was allowed to remain in the Forbidden City. He kept his imperial title ceremonially. He received a stipend. He maintained a miniature court. So inside the palace it was still the Qing dynasty. Outside the walls, it was the Republic. 2 governments, 1 city, 1 confused child. Puyi grew up believing he was still emperor. He held court rituals. He issued symbolic commands. He was surrounded by former officials who maintained illusions. But beyond the red walls, warlords were fighting. Politics were chaotic. China was fragmenting. It was like being the CEO of a company that no longer exists. Segment 6, a modern education, sort of. In 1919, a Scottish tutor arrived, Reginald Johnston. Johnston introduced Puyi to Western ideas, science, world maps, eyeglasses. Yes, eyeglasses. Puyi had poor vision, but traditional court belief said emperors were perfect. So no one had told him. When he first wore glasses and could finally see clearly, it was transformative. Imagine discovering at age 13 that trees have leaves. Johnston encouraged reformist thinking. He told Puyi about constitutional monarchies. He discussed world politics. For the first time, Puyi glimpsed a world beyond palace ritual. But outside events were moving faster than any tutoring session could handle. Segment 7, expelled from the Forbidden City. In 1924, a warlord coup changed everything. Republican troops entered Beijing. The imperial household special privileges were revoked. Puyi was expelled from the Forbidden City. After living his entire life inside its walls, he had to leave. No more ritual throne, no more court bows, no more imperial illusions. He moved first to Tianjin. For the first time, he saw modern streets, cars, electric lights, foreign concessions. He was no longer emperor, but he was still searching for a throne. Segment 8, a dangerous alliance. In the 1930s, Japan was expanding into northeastern China. Japanese officials approached Puyi with a proposal. They would restore him to a throne. He would rule a new state in Manchuria. That state became Manchukuo. In 1934, Puyi was installed as emperor again. But this time, the power behind the throne was not Qing officials. It was the Japanese military. Puyi believed he might restore Qing glory. In reality, he was a symbolic figurehead. He signed decrees. He wore imperial robes. But real decisions were made elsewhere. It was a tragic repetition. Authority without control, title without power. Segment 9, War and Collapse. During World War II, Manchukuo became part of Japan's wartime empire. When Japan surrendered in 1945, Manchukuo collapsed overnight. Puyi tried to flee. He was captured by Soviet forces. The man who had been emperor twice was now a prisoner. History had turned completely. Segment 10, Re-education and Reinvention. After several years in Soviet custody, Puyi was returned to China, now under the newly established People's Republic of China, led by Mao Zedong. Instead of execution, he was sent to a re-education camp. For nearly a decade, he underwent political reform. He studied Marxism. He wrote confessions. He reflected on his role in history. Eventually, he was declared reformed. He became an ordinary citizen. He worked as a gardener in Beijing, later as a research assistant. From son of heaven to public employee. It is one of the most extraordinary status transformations in modern history. Segment 11. The Final Years. In his later life, Puyi published memoirs. He appeared in public as a symbol of historical transition. He died in 1967 during the Cultural Revolution. No throne, no court, no dynasty, just a man who had once been emperor. His life inspired the film The Last Emperor, directed by Bernardo Bertolucci, which brought his strange, tragic journey to global audiences. But the real story is even more complex than cinema. What Puyi represents in Cross-Strait history. Puyi's life marks the final collapse of Imperial China. His abdication cleared the way for the Republic of China. The Republic later retreated to Taiwan after 1949. The People's Republic rose on the mainland. In that sense, Puyi stands at the hinge of Cross-Strait history. He represents the end of one era and the beginning of modern political struggle. His life reminds us, history does not always turn with heroes. Sometimes it turns with children who never chose their roles. Tonight, we followed the extraordinary life of Puyi, from toddler emperor to symbolic monarch to puppet ruler to prisoner to citizen. His story is not just about one person. It is about the collapse of a system, the fragility of power, the illusion of authority, and the painful birth of modern China, a child placed on a throne that was already cracking beneath him. Here's a question for you. Do you see Puyi primarily as a victim of history, or as someone who bears responsibility for the choices he made later in life? Was he tragic, naive, complicit, or simply trapped? Tell me what you think in the comments. If this video helped make Cross-Strait history a little less confusing, consider giving it a like and subscribing. History is complicated, but learning it doesn't have to be. Next episode, we move beyond emperors and into the power struggles that shaped modern China after the dynasty fell. I'll see you in the next episode.